This is Alter Life, the podcast about shifting perspectives, expanding consciousness, and truly thriving. I'm Dr. Ben Alter, and I'm here to challenge old paradigms and explore what's possible. Let's dive in. Happy to be with you. A new episode of the podcast and fresh start to something new. Yes, this is Alter Life. And yes, I did just read that because this is totally new for me. I'm stepping into something new and I'm inviting you to join me. This is not Alter Your Health anymore. I'm changing the name, I'm changing the vibe, I'm changing the intention. And let's talk about it. That's what this episode is all about. Talking about this change in direction, what to expect going forward, and the personal experience that I've been through the last, man, honestly, the last few years. I feel like this is a few years in the making, and really what's going on inside of me that's inspiring that, and what my intention is moving forward. And of course, as we wrap up today, we'll talk about some calls to action, some opportunities and invitations to go deeper together. So let's talk about this shift. Let's talk about the new brand, the new direction of this podcast. Many of you have been with Alter Your Health from the beginning. Gosh, I think we started, I probably should have looked this up, right? But I think we started back in 2018. This was just a project for me about creative expression. And I got pretty good at expressing myself authentically and having cool conversations. I've had guests on the podcast. I've talked about things and learned things and shared my new learnings and insights with you. And I have been focusing mainly on nutrition and lifestyle medicine, whole food, plant-based nutrition, of course. That has been kind of my identity as a naturopathic doctor. Of course, I went to school and I've always had this limiting belief. It's a belief, and I believe it to be a limiting belief that I need to use my education in some way, shape, or form. And the fact of the matter is, regardless of what I'm doing in my life, in my world, in my creation, and in my service to myself and humanity, I'm going to be using my education because I have that experience ingrained in me and that knowledge ingrained in me. And so I'm going to be using my education. But anyways, I had this limiting belief that if I wasn't talking about something quote unquote conventionally understood as health and medicine, then I wasn't like a real doctor in some way. And of course, I don't really care about being a real doctor, even though a lot of people think about naturopathic doctors as not in any way real doctors. And I'm over that. I'm well over that. But in any event, I still had this limiting belief that I needed to talk about nutrition and lifestyle and physical things because I'm a physical person talking about physical medicine. But a lot of you also know that I have had really transformative past experiences that have been more metaphysical in nature. And actually, that was really the impetus that has led me into the world of quote unquote natural medicine to begin with. And that was actually 16 years ago. I don't need to go into that story here. I think some of you have already heard about it, and maybe I can unpack it in greater detail in future episodes. So really, Alter Life is the natural evolution of me and this podcast. It's the evolution into a greater, deeper, more expansive conversation beyond just physical health, beyond nutrition and lifestyle and cold plunges and exercise. Yes, all of those things are awesome and important and things that I do daily. But what is most important and most transformative for me, and that I feel most inspired to share, are the conversations that are beneath the surface, that are more directed in the realm of mind and metaphysical reality and consciousness. And yes, I believe that when we focus there, when we align within ourselves and with nature, when we step into our true self and express ourselves and live authentically, presently in our lives, then health is actually just like a natural consequence. Yes, we need to eat well and move our bodies and sleep well and stay balanced and grounded, et cetera, and so forth. But all of that stuff is completely effortless when we are aligned more deeply within ourselves. So, anyways, that's kind of the tone of the podcast that I want to take and embrace and claim moving forward. And that is, of course, not just health per se, that is life, that is living. So, altered life. I changed the little, for those watching, the little background, which you may or may not be able to read because we've got a nice focal point on the lens here. But anyways, there's an alter life little sign there in the background because that's what I'm stepping into. And side note, Alter Health still exists for those curious and those wanting to learn more about the services that we offer as naturopathic doctors. Dr. Susanna is the naturopathic doctor at Alter Health. I'm also a naturopathic doctor, but I work with people more in the realm of mindset and relationships and so forth. So, that being said, what are we going to be talking about on this podcast moving forward? I'm going to be covering, I've got a few pillars here. I got a few pillars that I'm going to be covering and diving into various topics underneath these pillars in great detail. And really, as I see it, the sky's the limit. Um, so, mind, thought, and consciousness, how our experience of reality comes to exist, how we are conscious creators or can be more conscious of our creation as human beings. And really, that conversation is specific to our mental health, if you will, our mood, our experience mentally and emotionally in our lives and how we are the creators of that. Also, physical health and well-being, of course. It's hard for me to be in the world and not talk about how important it is to feel physically healthy and what we can do physically to help our health thrive. Also, on that realm, I'm super interested in physical performance, peak performance as an athlete, even though I'm not a quote unquote competitive athlete. I don't race or compete in any sort of thing. I am competitive within myself, and I hold myself to high standards athletically and physically. And achieving those standards, I think, are also it's a physical sort of thing. Of course, it's physical, but there's also a psychological component. So I want to explore the psychology and physicality of performance. Also, relationships and connection. Those of you may or may not know, I am a father. I have a 2-year-old daughter who is really, like, every day I am just in awe of the amount of love I have for my daughter. And of course, my wife, Susanna, who many of you know and has been a co-host on this podcast and a host for many episodes. And I'm sure hopefully we'll see more of Susanna as well. Side note, I feel like this maybe deserves its own proper announcement, but we are expecting another child at the end of the summer in August. So Susanna's wrapping up her first trimester of pregnancy with baby number 2. And anyways, that being said, relationships and connection, human connection, like that's a part of health and life and so important. And I feel like it's something that I am thinking about and taking conscious strides to optimize my relationships, both with myself and family and friends. And I think that having these discussions that open up deeper connection are super meaningful for living a generally more fulfilling life. Also, nature and rhythm, like circadian rhythm, nature, grounding. I should say that I'm looking forward to exploring, more fluid conversations in these topics, but also science, because of course there is a lot of science to support and to understand how that these pillars, if you will, can be optimized and really what it means to optimize these pillars and how we in optimizing these sort of things, the effects can be translated into every aspect of our life in terms of our health and our biochemistry and biomarkers and beyond. Also, I would love in future episodes to discuss culture and current events. I know that, like, there is a lot going on in our world, and I feel like I've always, at least in this podcast, been tiptoeing around the big cultural conversations. And I believe that it's important to have real grounded conversations that may or may not be difficult at times, because we're in a world that there's lots of divisiveness and separation, or I should say, I believe, perceived division and separation. And my intention is, of course, to live in a peaceful, prosperous, harmonious, healthy world. And I truly, firmly in my heart believe that that world that we probably all seek is so much closer than we may realize. Maybe it's just a few thoughts away. And maybe it's just the collective limitation of belief that is veiling us from experiencing more peace and harmony and health and vibrancy in our world. So yeah, those are some of the conversations that I'm looking forward to having. And I should note that I'll be doing some solo jamming, as I have in the past and have and am doing now, of course, on the podcast. And also, I hope to connect with inspiring figures that have something to offer, some new insights and perspectives to share when it comes to mind and consciousness and physical health and well-being and relationships and connection and nature and the rhythm and culture and current events. I hope to share these conversations with other people, because that's how I learn and grow and open my mind. For those who don't know, I am a big consumer of podcasts and media, and I've become more and more picky in terms of what I indulge in and what I digest, knowing how that which I am consuming is shaping and fixing how I think and perceive and am in the world. And I think on some level that's our nutrition too, right? Like what we are consuming, both in terms of our food, important, but also what we're consuming in the media landscape, maybe equally or more important. And so, anyways, I am super conscious of my consumption. I should say, I'm growingly more conscious of my consumption of what I'm consuming, media wise, podcast wise, YouTube video wise. And I intend to continue to be conscious, but also continue to be intentional in the conversations that I have. And my intention is to continue. I guess I'm using the word conscious and continue and intention. I'm using a lot of the same words over and over again. But my point being that I intend to continue opening my mind and exploring new ways of thinking and expanding perspectives. And and I think the big point here, because the issues, the so-called, or I should say the so-called answers or solutions to the so-called issues that we are facing are not found by exploring the issues. The well, I believe it's an Einstein quote. At least he's credited for saying that problems cannot be solved from the same level of thinking or consciousness from which they were created. And regardless of who says that, that's true. Point being, I'm expanding my consciousness. I'm expanding my perspectives. I'm expanding my way of thinking. And the only way that I know how to do that is to have conversations with other people and or listen to new perspectives and ideas from other people, because I've only got what I've got going on inside of myself. Okay, so that's what you can expect moving forward. Hopefully, weekly conversations diving into a number of different topics within these pillars, and conversations that I'm having with myself and I'm having with others. And on that note, maybe I'll hit the pause button here and just invite this to be a dialogue. If there are any guests or topics that you're interested in hearing about or discussing or exploring together, feel free to shoot me an email. I guess the best email associated with this podcast is info@alter.health, and we can go from there. All right, now let's shift gears, if I can, and talk about back to kind of the personal note, why this shift is happening, and really what's been going on inside of myself. I already kind of alluded to this idea that I've felt like I have been inside of this box. I've been boxed in, and frankly, the only way I got here, is by putting myself in it. And of course, this box is completely illusory. This is completely made up, is completely fabricated by my own thinking. But in any event, I have begun to dismantle some of those limiting thoughts and beliefs and programming that has led me here where I am, feeling a little bit boxed in. And my intention is to use this podcast, have these conversations as an exercise to grow, to expand, to evolve, and to feel good personally. And I firmly believe that as we all look in a direction that's aligned more with truth and expansion, I believe that health is always so much closer than it may appear. And by health, I also mean peace and harmony and all the airy fairy stuff that I do believe most people desire. We want more peace, health, expansion, good stuff in our world. And I do believe it is so much closer than it may realize. So I feel like I have been living with a little bit of a mask on. I've been creating and living with this false identity as a back to like the naturopathic doctor identity. I've been living with this within the confines of what I've meant that what I've made that mean for myself. And frankly, I'm done with it. Sure, I have had my training and life experience, and I am who I am, and I'm actually feel good about that. I don't feel like I need to like fess up for anything that I've done wrong. I don't have any guilt or shame, other than the only guilt or shame that I have is that I haven't allowed myself or given myself the space to live into and express myself more authentically sooner. And side note, I feel like for maybe some of you know me from previous chapters of my life. I have gone through chapters of my life where I felt more free to express myself. But for whatever reason, after calling myself a naturopathic doctor, I felt confined by what that means. And the funny thing is, of course, there are no two naturopathic doctors that are alike. Similarly to chiropractic medicine, when you go in to see a practitioner, they're going to have a whole different paradigm that they're working within. Sure, maybe they've been trained by the same source and education and have the same philosophy that guides their practice. But in any event, no two practitioners are alike. Everyone's got their own unique skills and tools and resources and knowledge and experience and personal spin and flavor that they add to it. But in any event, I still had this limiting thought that I needed to be someone that I wasn't. So this podcast and the rebranding and reshaping of Alter Your Health into Alter Life is the symbolic rebirth of me and the expression of me moving forward. And it already feels good. It already feels really expansive and freeing and inviting. And I'm so excited to move onward into the future on this more open and expansive note. So I'm really looking forward to this. And I should say that the bigger picture, personally, is I want to make an impact. I want to help make this world a more beautiful, healthy place. And I have always felt like working one-on-one with people just feels a little bit limiting. And of course, one-on-one personal health is super important. How can we make this world a healthier place if we don't have healthy people to live into that? But that being said, I feel like it's never really been my calling to sit down and consult and hear individuals. That being said, if I do that, and when I do that, I love to have the conversations that are more aligned with the deeper elements of health, things that I'm referencing in this episode here, the relationships in our life, the mindset and the thoughts and the limiting beliefs. Because I feel like once we tweak that, Once we figure out how to shift those perspectives and free ourselves up in our thoughts and then everything unfolds. Again, the way I see it is that health, and I'm talking about physical health, balanced biochemistry, balanced hormones, balanced energy, balanced blood sugar, balance in life, balance in the body. Physical health is the natural consequence of just being aligned within oneself. It should be effortless. We shouldn't have to scramble and pick the perfect foods in order to feel optimally healthy. Of course, nutrition is central to health as well, but there's something beneath that, something greater, something that has greater leverage. And that is where I like to focus when I am anywhere, but when I'm working one-on-one with someone and or when I am recording podcast episodes and expressing myself in the world, I want to make the impact with the greatest leverage as that I can. So, as we wrap up the first episode of Alter Life, the 395th episode of the podcast journey, I would love for you to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and maybe to share this with someone in your life who you feel like is also in alignment with this journey that we're on together. And what else can you do? Be present. Be present. Be open to what life is giving you, and respond in a way that feels empowered. And gosh, I'm really excited for next week's episode. Not exactly sure what it'll be yet, but I've got a few ideas. So that's a wrap for today on Alter Life. If you're enjoying the podcast, hit that subscribe button and share it with a friend. And until next time, keep thriving.